Hello and welcome to Renew, the show about the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University. The College of Forest Resources promotes and enables the conservation and management and wise use of our natural resources. I'm your host, Leslie Berger. Today's show will feature one of the three units within the college, the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture. And here to represent that unit is Dr. Chris Ayers. So thank you for joining us today, Chris.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm glad you're able to be here.
Yeah.
So you have a position as instructor within the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture. And I'm actually really excited about having you here because a lot of times we talk about the research that happens in a university setting, and we feature that on this show. But this is a university, and it's all about education, or it should be. You know, that should be a primary focus of that. And so I think positions such as yours are vital for what we're trying to do as a mission of the university. So for those who don't know you, if you would tell us a little bit about the classes that you teach.
Sure. I teach a number of courses in the department. I teach mammalogy, I teach ornithology, I teach the principles of wildlife conservation and management. I teach an introductory class to wildlife and fisheries professions, and I also teach a graduate course on ecological concepts.
Okay, and so for those who don't know, mammalogy is the study of mammals, and ornithology is the study of birds. So you're teaching some courses that are kind of central to what we hope our students, when they leave, will have these concepts.
Most of the students that go through our program end up taking at least one course from me, quite likely multiple courses from me. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine. So what is your background that led you to the position that you're in now?
Well, I was an undergraduate major in wildlife science at Virginia Tech, and I decided when I was done with that I would try my hand at teaching. So I actually stayed at Virginia Tech and got a master's degree in secondary science education. And with that, I taught middle school for 2 years, 1 year in Hawaii and 1 year in Maryland outside of Washington, D.C.
That was been different experiences.
Yes, very different locations, very different experiences, very different students, very different lifestyles.
Sure.
And at the end of those 2 years, I decided that I still wanted to learn more about wildlife and get into educating myself a little bit more.
Sure.
And so I decided to go back to graduate school at North Carolina State University in Raleigh and got a master's degree in wildlife science, doing research focused on Canada geese. And then from there, I decided that I did want to try and pursue a doctorate degree. And so I had an opportunity to actually come here to Mississippi State University in the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture and studied carnivore ecology and lots of different species actually, and how they interact with their habitat and their environment and their behavior.
Okay. So how has your formal training as a teacher, and then you've actually just had practical experience teaching in Hawaii and Maryland, how has that informed what you do in the classroom at a college level?
I think that at any level of teaching, the experience that you get in a classroom teaches you a lot of patience and understanding of what students are going through, what their life is like, and the things that are happening with them outside of the classroom and how that affects them in the classroom.
Sure.
So having that understanding when a student is stressed out or is not performing the way that you would like them to be, or not working quite as hard as you would hope that they would, you have an understanding that there are other things happening in their life and that you need to try and recognize that and talk to them about it and know that they know that you understand things that they're going through.
Sure. I think that attitude that you just described and that approach you just described is why you have been recognized for your teaching, being awarded for that, because that is an approach that not all instructors, faculty, researchers, lecturers understand. And I know as the undergraduate coordinator and as a parent who had a child in the program in the department, I appreciate that approach to looking at those people as individuals and helping them to achieve what it is that they want to do.
Yep. And I recognize that we have a wide variety of students in their backgrounds, in their goals and objectives of what they want to get out of the major and their career. And so it's kind of walking a fine line of trying to tailor a course to so many different individuals. And so that's also, an interesting part of the position.
Sure it is. And you teach so many classes. You encounter so many students, so many different size classes, from small to some of our largest ones, that you have to be able to be flexible.
Yes.
So I'm going to enjoy visiting you with a little bit more after we come back from the break and learn a little bit more about what you do in the department.
Great, thank you.
Want a career as big as the outdoors? Want to have an impact on the environment? The College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University delivers hands-on training, ensuring clean air and water, wildlife habitats, and a sustainable environment. Creating new wood products and retooling old ones for today and tomorrow. Find a career in whatever path you choose. Majors in forestry, natural resource and environmental conservation, sustainable bioproducts, wildlife, fisheries, and aquaculture. Want a career as big as the outdoors? Choose the College of Forest Resources at Mississippi State University.
Welcome back to Renew. Joining me today is Dr. Chris Ayers from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture. And before the break, we were talking a little bit about some of your approaches to education. One of the things that we hear about in the educational field, and really at society at large, is some of these generational shifts. We had the baby boomer generation, and then the millennials and Gen Xers. And there are realistically and based on research some differences in those groups of people. Do you see those kind of differences in the classes that you teach, and to kind of maybe compare to where you taught, where you were a student as an undergrad, what you saw when you're teaching junior high? And I realize those age groups are different versus what you see now. Do you see those kind of generational shifts?
I'm luckily not old enough to say that I have seen a generational shift. I can say that I actually see a lot of similarities in all people, that they want to have hands-on, engaging experiences. And I don't think that is something that has changed so much. That is something that we try to retain in our coursework, and that is something that the students still expect and want in the coursework. And so that's also the funnest stuff for the instructors. So those are the activities: going out in the field, actually handling animals, teaching them safe and responsible ways to work with animals. Those are things that I don't think have changed very much. The technologies and the way that students are used to getting information have changed some, but students still need the skills of having a face-to-face conversation. And I think that is something that we may not expect them to always have the skills coming in to our classroom anymore. And that's something that I like to have. So in some of my courses, I actually have a discussion section where we sit down and we have a smaller group of students talk about topics in ecology and wildlife, and I think that helps build their confidence in having those sort of more intimate relationship, close, conversations.
Right, a safe environment where ideas can be shared. And I think that is an example of how things have shifted. Historically, you think way back to like Socrates, that is how they taught. They sat in small groups and they discussed things. And students today are unfamiliar with having conversations with one another. You can sit at a restaurant and seeing everybody on their phones at a table and no one's talking. They can be texting to each other across the table and not having a face-to-face conversation.
But they enjoy it. They tell me
do.
that they enjoy having those conversations because it's not so rudimentary of learning facts. It's actually sitting and exploring new ideas, broadening their horizons, seeing different backgrounds of all their classmates that they don't ever have conversations with.
Correct. Yeah, and we're starting to see, thankfully, some greater diversity within the field. Has historically been it's a science-based field, so historically white males, and the number of females, even in my generation, have changed from when I was the only female in our undergrad program to now where 50% of the students at Mississippi State in the wildlife program, wildlife fisheries and aquaculture, are female. And now we're also starting to see people of color moving into this as a profession. So it's exciting times, but that idea of being able to talk to one another and build those friendships across races, across genders, I think is key to us being able to be successful as professionals when we're managing a natural resource on behalf of the citizens of the state or the citizens of the nation. We have to understand what those desires are if we're going to be successful in the end. And I applaud you for trying to put discussion in that because it's difficult. It's much easier to just feed them the lecture and then walk out of the classroom and not make it interesting and not make it engaging. And again, that's why you've been awarded, because you're trying to make those connections with those students. We only have just a minute left, but if you could teach any class in the department, what would you teach? New or existing?
Oh, I would love to teach a summer field techniques course where we are all together for several weeks out in the field every day. It would be intensive. It would be a lot of work for me and for the students. But I think that, again, that's where they really get engaged and are feeling like they are getting the most out of their education and really paying attention. And those are things that we've discussed, and there are some things that we need to try and perhaps work on toward that. But I think that would be a very fun course to teach.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you for coming and joining us here on the show today, and I appreciate the rest of you who have tuned in, spending time and learning a little bit more about the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Aquaculture. We hope that you will come back again. Until then, I've been your host, Leslie Berger.